The Kutch Desert lies along the Pakistan border in northwestern India. It is an inhospitable region, dry, arid, and treeless. The peoples who settle here have migrated as the result of political unrest, war, and natural disaster. Some are nomadic tribes who seek new grazing lands and the possibility of trading goods. In contrast to the severe landscape, the tribal cultures are a rich and colorful presence. The various groups maintain a wealth of traditional garments and ornament. At the height of their art is embroidery. These elaborate and intricately detailed works fill many needs. Some function as clothing, some as dowry pieces. In the past, many have been used to satisfy the patronage of kings. Perhaps most importantly for these cultures, works have been set aside as a type of insurance policy, a form of material wealth that might be sold in times of drought or other hardship. As beautiful as they are, these embroideries have a much more subtle importance. They preserve the unique tribal culture of the people who make them. Sarah Masi, a Megwar elder, describes learning embroidery. Just as you learn to write each letter before making a word, we learn each stitch to make the pattern. We follow our mother, and we learn our designs slowly. As children, girls learn by copying older pieces. In time, they'll have memorized their traditional stitches and acquired a valuable skill. Without a written language, tribal communities use embroidery to record their experience. The stitches show patterns of trade, celebrate a marriage or a firstborn child, and record the symbols of both tribal and desert life. A scorpion, a flower, and a peacock are all popular recurring motifs, treated differently by different tribes. Designs from different communities may blend, yet the core of their stitched language will always remain intact. Tribal identities are preserved. In the Kutch Desert, villages are isolated. At times it may be 20 kilometers or more to the nearest settlement. This distance, essential to desert life, can also make artisans easy prey for savvy middlemen and economic exploitation. Too often the value of indigenous work is set by the standards of a foreign market, unaware of the complexities in the work or the conditions of the producer. Mass production can falsely represent traditional craft and destroy the relationship between artisan and community. In times of political and economic instability, artisans often find themselves used as cheap piece laborers for either large export or tourist products. In the Kutch Desert, artisans are used to produce French embroidery, Amish quilts, and cheap knockoffs of the work of other tribal groups. In the eye of the general public, embroidery from this area has been associated with poor machine-made or mass-produced pieces. Museums and collectors, who have an opportunity to educate, most often seek out historical pieces, ignoring contemporary work. In order to maintain local traditions, the artisans in this area had to find a way to make contemporary work commercially viable. They needed to unite and promote themselves with confidence. A meeting is called. Women come from the village and fill the small mud home to capacity in the stifling heat. These women are members of KMVS, Kutch Mahila Vikas Sangathan. KMVS is a rural development project designed to connect distinct tribal communities. It is also one of the successful cooperatives in the area, with over 4,000 members, 1,200 of which are embroiderers.
I'm telling them also I'm happy. We sing
The tribes of the Kachchh, Jat, Mutwa, Soda, Robari, and Megwa, all work together. Collectively, they set standards of quality while maintaining their unique traditions. To ensure equity and build confidence, decisions regarding costing, design, and organization are subject to a vote. In this way, responsibility for the direction of the embroidery is placed where it is most appropriate, in the hands of the women who create it. Meena Ben heads the craft division of KMVS. She works with women throughout the desert, defining a relationship to the cooperative that suits their needs, while also benefiting the group as a whole. She constantly visits each village community, bringing cooperative news and managing quality. Meena Ben's persistence has earned her the trust of villagers, who are often wary of outsiders. Over the past 10 years, she's camped outside many villages, waiting and slowly winning an opportunity to speak about the cooperative. Now, the villagers greet Meena Ben with smiles and friendly pinches. The efforts of Meena Ben and KMVS have been successful. They have attracted merchants who are inspired by traditional craft. Charllotte Kwon is the owner of Maewa Handprints, one of the primary partners of KMVS. Charlotte is well known to the women. She frequently visits the villages to strengthen their relationship to their market. The women have an opportunity for open discussion and input regarding the cooperative's direction. On one visit, Charlotte was so enthusiastic about the quality and the beauty of the work that she described it as collector or museum quality. For many, the concept of a museum was quite foreign, but they were curious and wanted to know more. Once explained, the idea of an exhibition of their work filled them with pride. Through the Eye of a Needle, Stories from an Indian Desert, is the first museum exhibit for the KMVS embroiderers. For women whose existence depends on the trade value of their work, they face this unfamiliar concept with extraordinary courage, bringing vitality and depth to the development of the exhibit. Under their own direction, the women's experiences have been recorded through video, photo, and text. Varadaba Hajusama, a Jat elder, is describing life in the desert. She tells of drought, cattle, marriage, and embroidery. When she was a girl, her family migrated to the Kutch desert from Halab. Like many nomadic tribes, they made their way east from areas throughout Central Asia and northern India. Among the Jat community, Varadaba's leadership inspires pride. This exhibit, Varadaba emphasizes, establishes the women as artists. The smaller pieces, though necessary economically, don't show the breadth of our capability. Varadaba talks to Meena Ben about Jat motifs. Many, she says, are done because their mothers and grandmothers did them. Some meanings she doesn't know. Under stress of drought, war, communal unrest, and natural disaster, craft has sometimes been set aside for a generation. Among oral cultures, this gap can mean a loss of cultural memory. Embroidery, she says, has always been a common means to communicate between desert tribes, a familiar language. Now, as the work goes beyond the desert to represent its community, it must clearly communicate its origins. At this meeting, the patterns for the exhibition pieces are being discussed. The larger scale requires planning and input from all the women involved. A piece of this size, the embroiderers decide, will occupy one woman between childcare and daily tasks for approximately 2 months. Later, after the work has begun, they realize they've underestimated.
Now the old city of Bhuj is completely devastated. There's nothing that is standing there, and the assessment is that...
On the morning of January 26, 2001, a massive earthquake hit the Kutch Desert. Measuring 7.9 on the Richter scale, it flattened the nearby town of Bhuj.
Priorities right now remain medical assistance because a lot of people have been wounded.
A German team has just pulled out a 13-year-old girl. I spoke with her just
Many of the outlying villages were left intact due to their low, mud-constructed architecture, but they were completely cut off from supply sources, and worst of all, their local markets were gone. The embroiderers showed tremendous courage in the face of disaster. As one KMVS member said, "All we need is a needle and thread to return to work." At the Regional Learning Center in Nakatrana, packages are made with thread, mirrors, and a stenciled textile marked with lime powder.
This is done by me.
Some women who suffered greater losses in the earthquake choose to work on smaller pieces. This way they can generate income more quickly as they recover from the disaster. Meena Ben meets with embroiderers in this Megwar village. Within the cooperative, work is available at many skill levels. This ensures that the market remains diversified, and all the women can find a level of employment. Many women prefer to graft their own designs, and sometimes an embroiderer with a particular talent will graft designs for her whole community. Chalk, dusted through a pattern of tiny pinpricks, guides the embroiderer as she covers each inch in hundreds of stitches. Her choice of color and technique enlivens the design with her character. Once a year, the embroiderers come together at the KMVS dividend meeting, where they share in the distribution of cooperative profits. They have decided to hold this annual event in a single location, rather than within their individual communities. Charllotte Kwon of Maewa has been invited to document the meeting for the museum exhibit. Women from each community are called forward to light a puja, a prayer of thanks. They address their fellow artisans. Varadaba is calling it an important day together, since all these women who are embroidering are earning their livelihood from this work. They're pleased with the success. Meguben, from the Rabari community, describes how prior to joining the cooperative, they would take their work to the nearby town of Bhuj and try to sell it independently. Now, through KMVS, they are able to sell their work more consistently with better compensation. The women are much happier. Nantu Kaka describes the relationship of the village to KMVS. For many years our village has been involved with KMVS. We would never have expected that our work would be recognized in this way. We are not formally educated, and we have no knowledge of the outside world. But by doing embroidery with the cooperative, we have an education. We know the world, and they know us. The motivation has been given by KMVS and must be continued in the hearts of the women and into the future. Paramabai Sawa says the women who've come to receive their dividends are happy to have their peers praise their work. Nandubai wrote this song to honor the embroiderers of Kutch. It is sung throughout the villages. The women have voted to receive dividends in the form of pots and gold. As cash, money in the household is often out of their control. This way, they benefit directly from their work and can distribute the wealth as they see fit. As members of the cooperative, the women must bring their finished work to a training center. This trip encourages women from the different communities to meet and share their experiences. They learn about healthcare, legal aid, family planning, cooperative business matters, and banking. They also support each other, exchange ideas, and catch up on gossip. The larger pieces destined for the exhibition can take up to 6 months to complete. They will bring an income normally earned over the course of a year to a year and a half. Significant things can be accomplished with these earnings. Meena Ben invites Meenaba, Pajuba, and Janakba to share how their earnings from this work will be spent. All 3 women talk about their children. Meenaba will buy gold jewelry for her son's marriage. Janakba will buy jewelry for her daughter-in-law. Pajuba will send her son to an English school. Meena Ben explains that the larger pieces enable them to make investments. It acts like a savings account. One of the women described going into a shop for supplies and trying to explain to the shopkeeper about the larger art pieces KMVS is working on. She was told that there was no market for such work. Despite what the local shopkeepers tell them, the women have found a market for the higher quality work they do. They are learning from their own experience of trade, rather than relying on information from merchants who would benefit from telling them otherwise. Meena Ben explains that having their work in a museum may mean that people will come directly to the villages to place orders, that the identity of the communities will be known. People won't have to go through KMVS or Mewa to buy the work. Meena Ben emphasizes to the women that they now know the value of their embroidery. They know what it sells for and how to maintain quality, and they must have pride in their identity. You no longer have to work for middlemen, she says. That is the purpose of KMVS and the goal of Mewa. And that is the reason for this exhibit on the embroidery of Kutch. In this desert, the women say, it's better to work together. For anyone to make individual decisions is a greater risk. Meena Ben asks in the village, how many women feel this way? They reply that it doesn't matter how many women, they will all make the decision together. It is a crucial moment for craftspeople. In the face of the homogenizing forces of a global economy, it is more vital than ever that these artisans determine the direction of their art. They must retain the rights to their indigenous designs and the rights to self and community that are the essence of their culture. Embroidery isn't static. It's a record of history that is worn, grows old, decays, and is born again within each generation. It is a part of daily life, a place where beauty and utility coincide. Embroidery carries the memories of the women. It is a social art that draws them together to communicate from their hearts. Craft is embedded in the whole of life. It is the act of constantly creating. Its beauty sustains us.
Hari